What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, my name is AkeemHaynes. I'm a two-time Olympian, Olympic bronze medalist, author, motivational speaker, and sports commentator. On my channel, we talk boxing, MMA, track and field, and of course, motivation and encouraging content. If this is something that you enjoy, then I hope that you subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get into the video. Leigh Wood versus Mauricio Lara. This is sure to be an exciting fight. This one is happening over in the Motor Point Arena in England. Wood will be defending his WBA featherweight title. This is going to be an interesting matchup, so let's get into it. Let's start with the champion, Leigh Wood. 26 wins, 2 losses, 16 wins by way of knockout. We remember last year in that fight of the year against Michael Conlan, how great of a performance that was from both men. That was the last time we saw Leigh Wood. That was the last impression that was inside of our heads. Leigh Wood, in his last 5 fights, with the exception of his loss to Jazza Dickens in 2020, he's won his fights by way of some form of stoppage, right? And I think it's important to mention all of that because just from listening to some of the news and the media and the articles that I was reading, a lot of people aren't giving Leigh Wood the type of punching power that I feel like he respects. I don't think he's as big as a puncher as Lara is, but I think he packs a punch, and his record definitely proves it, at least to me. So just wanted to add that in because I do think he could win this fight by way of stoppage, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Let's keep going with Leigh Wood. 2014, his first loss when he fought Gavin McDonald, right? His first loss. He lost that fight in the 6th round by way of TKO. He was doing well in the 6th round, using his feet to keep the distance, trying to use the jab, and then he got clipped with an overhand right as he was moving, and that started McDonald putting forth an array of shots that Woods did not have an answer for. And if you remember that fight, the ref came in between them to break them up the first time, and it looked like he was stopping the fight. So I felt like momentum for McDonald that fight was kind of lost, or so it seemed. Then the ref moved away and brought them in, and then McDonald just picked up where he left off, and eventually he got the stoppage. And I wanted to mention that, right? When we talk about the mindset of a fighter, you never know how you are going to respond after your first loss, and how you lose a fight definitely matters and plays with your mental psyche. So after that fight in 2020, he fights Jazza Dickens. Fought very well, fought a tough fight throughout the fight, but Dickens had Woods fighting off of the back foot a good portion of that fight. Dickens had him hurt in the first round. It was a high-paced fight from start to finish. And Woods dug deep, something he often does. Came on strong in the second half of the fight, but found himself in trouble in the 9th round. He came back the next round, and in the last 30 seconds of that fight, he put together a flurry of shots that had Dickens hurt, but then the bell rang, and he lost that fight by mixed decision. And I remember thinking to myself, like it seems like he was finding a second wind in that fight as his opponent was starting to get hurt, and his opponent was starting to fade, and his opponent was starting to get tired himself. I'm going somewhere with this. Let's keep on going. Then he goes after that to fight Zhu Khan, right? Who many people didn't really think that he was going to beat. A lot of people thought Khan was just going to outbox Wood for 12 rounds. And Wood goes in there and puts on a spectacular performance. I mean, he was poised, he was calm, found the right spots at the right time. And Wood isn't a particularly fast starter, right? Not really a volume puncher, in my opinion, right? But he picked Khan apart all night. Usually Khan is a busier fighter than he was in that fight, but Wood really did whatever he wanted in that fight. Combinations were sharp. He was accurate to the body, gave us different shots from different angles, mixes attacks well. He had a lot of success in that fight. Then as the fight goes on, he found a way to close out the show. In round 12, he got the stoppage. Then he goes to fight Michael Conlan. In the end of that opening round, he gets dropped and he gets up and he goes to his corner. The next 2 rounds, it looks like Conlan is going to walk away with this one in convincing fashion. But again, Wood used his experience from being in a similar position when faced with adversity early on in the fight, and he starts to fight back, starts to control the pace of the fight and wills himself to keep coming forward, wills himself to keep going, as he did in his last few fights. in a good majority of his fights, right? He catches a second win as the fight goes on, but he keeps his consistency with his work and finds a way to drag Conlon into deep waters and find the right openings at the right time. You don't get a lot of openings in boxing, especially if you are defensively sound and very skilled. Mike and Conlon, he's very skilled. Leigh Wood is a very skilled fighter, but I would say there is something inside of him that is not really physical that you can see, and that is the will to endure storms. That is the will and the strength of his to find a way to weather the storm, not get discouraged, and not give up your game plan and still continue fighting forward. Leigh Wood has a lot of heart, has a lot of courage, a lot of belief. He has good skills. He's a good talent, and I think he has more ways to beat Mauricio Lara, in my opinion, right? But from what I've seen of Woods, again, perhaps the strongest weapon in his bag might not be his hands, but rather his will, his heart, determination, and his courage to win the fight. Let's talk about Mauricio Lara. 25 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, 18 wins by way of knockout. Lara's losses came early in his career. During his developmental stage, he lost his first fight of his career. 13 fights later, he loses to Elliot Chavez by way of knockout in the first round back in 2018. Then from there, he's won 14 straight fights, 10 of those by way of knockout, including a win against Josh Warrington. Lara is a tough night for anyone in that division. He's confident, he's got power, he's relentless, he's not afraid to take risks, and he's not afraid to let the hands go. Even if he gets hit, he's willing to take that risk because he believes his power. You will not be able to take many of those matchups against him when he is firing and you're firing. He believes he has more power than you. He's always going to give us an exciting fight. He starts out fast, right? He brings the pressure early. In his 25 fights to date, 12 of those wins have came by stoppage before the 5th round. So you can't come out against Lara and not be ready for Lara, right? You have to be warm early because you'll find yourself on the canvas if you aren't careful. I saw some of the interviews where Leigh Woods and his team was talking about, we're going to go where the fight goes. If he wants to stand and trade shots, we're going to stand and trade shots. And while I like the confidence of what his team is saying, I don't think that's the best idea. I don't think that's how you beat Mauricio Lara, in my opinion. And while I do think Woods has pop in his shots, Lara has power and his intentions are just bad behind it, right? He throws a lot of power punches. And if you can be patient with Lara, you'll have your openings because when he misses, you can use his momentum against him and counter him and get yourself out the way. Let's go back to Lara's fight against Emilio Sanchez. I think he made up in his mind early in that fight that I want to win this fight by stoppage and I want to get it done early, right? Because the way he came out in that fight, the first 2 rounds of that fight from both men were intense, to say the least, right? Lara was throwing punishing shots. So was Sanchez. Not a lot of jabs were being thrown for either man. Lara put out a lot of energy because he was breathing hard in that 3rd round prior to him getting the stoppage at the end of the round, but he was giving everything behind these punches to try to land the right shot at the right time and catch him on that sweet spot. Not to discredit Sanchez, he did some good solid work in that fight. He fought back and didn't back down and hurt Lara to the body. He took advantage when Lara missed and fired back in the end. And I forgot what round it was, but there was a round where he had Lara on the ropes and he was just firing punches at will. And Lara shelled up a little bit because I don't think he was expecting Sanchez to try and bully him because he's usually the one that's the bully. And so Sanchez did have some success in that fight, but he got caught too cleanly. Sanchez is a very physical guy with a similar style. So that goes to tell you the type of physicality that Lara brings with him. Now, when he fought Josh Warrington, that was a physical and grueling fight as well in different ways because Warrington's tactics sometimes is a little questionable, but that frustrates his opponents, right? But those are the fights that Lara likes. Physical fights where he doesn't have to try and cut off the ring or too much movement. If you're in front of him, perfect. That's when he likes to go to work. Now, in his most recent fight against Jose San Martin, who has a very respectable record, right? And he's a veteran in the sport. Lara was much more patient and tactical in his approach in that fight than he was against Sanchez, right? He was using his feet. He was using the jab, right? He was throwing punches to the body, to the head, mixing up his attacks, finding openings for his uppercut, just waiting for things to open up. And on a few occasions, just barely missed on connecting on a massive right hand that would have put down anybody. Then the third round comes and he found that opening with that right hand, put him down the first time, and then Lara left hook closed out the show. That was a fight that I felt like was more tailored for Lara stylistically. San Martin just walked straight forward towards him for 3 rounds. He was setting himself up for a fight that at his age that he just wasn't going to win against the more powerful and younger man. But again, it's not like Lara is a guy who cannot be hit. He gets hit, but he can be more of a tactical and strategic fighter than just someone who bullies you and imposes his power on you. So who wins? I'm a little torn here who I'm personally leaning towards. I think the first 5 rounds are when Lara is going to be his most dangerous, right? He's going to have his energy. He's going to come in warm and ready. He's going to bring the pressure and the intensity and the power. He's going to be amped up, ready to fight. Woods isn't a fast starter at that. And there's been a bunch of fights where against pressure, aggressive fighters, he's found himself in trouble where he either got dropped early, right, caught with a big shot that stumbled him and backed him up, or was on the ropes and was in danger. So I favor Lara early. However, Woods has endured and weathered a lot of storms early in the fight. I think if Leigh Wood can weather some of the early storm, stand up to Lara when he needs to, because he can't let the power make him hesitate. He has to be able to stand there and make strategic attacks, know when to fight, but use his footwork to get out the way, right? And tire Lara out. Let him use his energy, right? And you try to limit the damage. And I think if he can weather some of that early storms as the fight goes on, talking about 7th, 8th, 9th, 12th, and so forth, as the fight goes on, Leigh Wood in previous fights before has shown that he has that will about him, that if he's in the fight going into those rounds, that he's going to find a second win and he's going to will himself to victory, even if he is tired, right? We've seen that he can find a way to keep throwing a consistent work rate and tire his opponent out, right? So his conditioning is very well. And if he can drag Lara out into the championship rounds, it favors Wood, in my opinion, right? So it kind of comes down to, can he weather the storm early? Can he get Lara tired? I mean, will Lara go in with a different strategy? We don't know. I'm just basing off what I have seen Lara from his fights before. He's generally a fast starter, but against San Martin, he came in a little bit differently. I actually thought he respected San Martin as well, too. I don't know if he respects Leigh Wood the same, but if the fight in the pressure is early, I think Wood gets clipped and it could be a wrap. But if he can endure some of that storm early and stay consistent with his work rate, right, I think it favors him going into those championship rounds. So for me, I am taking Mauricio Lara by knockout. Personally, I think Lara is going to bring a strategic pressure, right? I don't think he's going to do everything to tire himself out in the first couple rounds, but I do think some of these shots early, these body shots, these headshots, I think they're going to add up on Leigh Wood. But again, if Leigh Wood can weather that storm early, man, you know, there's a good possibility that he could close out the show later to the fight. When a fighter is tired, their hands start to drop a little bit lower and they don't come out with that same consistency in punching power, right? So I have Lara winning this one by TKO, stoppage in some form. What are your thoughts on this fight? Who do you have winning? Let me know in the comments section below. This is a great fight. Definitely let me know who you have winning in the comments below. If you would like to support the channel, there's a couple ways that you can do so. You can like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you would like to support by way of donation, you can find options in the description below. Also, my Cash App handle will be on screen as well. Shout out to Ali Point TV, man, for the donation. I appreciate you, man. Any amount goes towards the growth of this channel and will be greatly, greatly appreciated. So with all that being said, if you've been watching the video this time, then do me a favor and subscribe to the channel, and we'll definitely see you next time.